Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'll talk about Shenhe regarding her talents, her playstyle, artifacts, weapons, and team comps. She is a very versatile unit, so you can either play her as a Cryo support or you can play her as a sub DPS. I will also talk about her builds and playstyle for sub DPS role later in the video, so be sure to watch it to the end. As we know, Shenhe is a Cryo damage buffer, so she can buff her team's Cryo damage including her own Cryo damage. This is the reason why she can be played as sub DPS since her buff applies to her too, and her elemental skill deals a decent amount of cryo damage. It has a multiplier of 302% when held and 223% when pressed at level 8. And because of her 4th Ascension passive, she can buff the damage type depending on whether you press or hold the skill. Her elemental skill also generates icy quills whether you press or hold it, and this icy quill is insanely good. It gives you a flat damage buff based on Shenhe's current attack, so giving Shenhe buffs on her attack such as using Bennett's elemental burst or Sarah's elemental skill is also directly adding more damage to the icy quill. Why this is insanely good is because it gives you a flat damage bonus. The damage calculation formula consists of multiplying total attack by the skill's multiplier plus the flat damage times the critical value times the damage bonus. So the flat damage that the icy quill gives is before the crit and bonus damage are put into the calculation. Assume my Ganyu has 2400 attack and her charge shot at level 10 has a multiplier of 391%. Also assume that we have 100 crit and 0 damage bonus. Putting all the numbers in the formula, with 0 flat damage, my Ganyu deals roughly 14k damage to the enemy, excluding resistances, etc. Assume Shenhe provides 3000 flat attack bonus. With a flat attack bonus, the damage increases by 4k from 14k to 18k. This might seem small, but what if you have a higher crit damage and cryo damage bonus? Assume we have 150 crit damage, and with 46.6% cryo damage bonus from the goblet, without the flat attack, you're dealing 34,452 damage to the enemy. But with the flat attack bonus, you're dealing 45,447. That's a 10k difference in your damage output. This calculation alone shows how powerful her icy quill is. Her flat damage bonus gives such a huge boost to the cryo DPS unit, even without adding other factors such as elemental resistance reductions, critical damage boost, or cryo damage boost from the others. For her combo and playstyle, we'll talk about it later in the video, so be sure to watch it. For her elemental burst, she casts a cryo field that deals damage over time to enemies standing on her field. But the focus point on her elemental burst is not the damage, but rather the effect applied on the enemy, and it is the cryo and physical resistance reduction. It decreases the enemy's cryo resistance by 15% and 59% of physical resistance at level 10. 15% might seem small, but did I remind you that a level 20 5-star cryo goblet gives 46% of cryo damage bonus, so 15% is 1/3 of the cryo damage bonus offered by the goblet. For her playstyle, you can either place her as a sub DPS or her full support. Note that her Ascension 4 passive buffs the damage when you press or hold her elemental skill. Pressing her elemental skill buffs your team's elemental burst and elemental skill damage output, while holding it buffs your team's normal, charge, and plunging attack damage. For example, you are using a main DPS Ganyu with Shenhe. Since Ganyu mainly deals damage by doing her charge shot, you might want to hold Shenhe's elemental skill instead of pressing it. But if you're using the main DPS Ayaka, you might want to use the press version instead of the hold, since Ayaka has a huge burst multiplier. This is not limited to cryo characters, but all types of elements. The only advantage of using cryo main DPS instead of other elements is because of the icy quill that was created when you press or hold the elemental skill. The icy quill only triggers when you are dealing damage using cryo type attacks, giving you the damage buff based on Shenhe's current attack, so it gives you an even higher damage when you are using a cryo main DPS. So for sub DPS Shenhe, you can either cast your elemental burst first, then cast your hold elemental skill, giving your elemental skill a higher damage since the cryo resistance of the enemy has been reduced, also buffing the normal, charge, and plunging attack damage dealt by Shenhe. Or you can use tap elemental skill, cast your ultimate burst, then switch Shenhe out with your other main DPS, and Shenhe's ultimate burst cryo field will get the damage bonus from it even when Shenhe is switched out. Also note that because Shenhe reduces physical resistance on enemies standing on her elemental burst field, she can utilize Superconduct to reduce the physical resistance further, giving a boost to physical damage dealers. But I don't really recommend focusing your damage in Shenhe because of how low her damage multipliers are, so the best option will be focusing on your main DPS and place Shenhe according to your main DPS main damage output, since she becomes way more valuable that way. Her C1 adds another charge to her elemental skill. This is good because you can generate more energy this way and build up your stacks faster. Her C2 is really good because it extends her ultimate burst duration by 6 seconds and gives a 15% cryo damage bonus to the active characters. With the initial 12 seconds, adding another 6 seconds results in 18 seconds, and with a 20 seconds cooldown on her elemental burst, this makes her elemental burst uptime to almost 100%. Her C3 is also really good because it increases the percentage of the flat attack bonus that she gives up to 91% at level 12. Her C4 gives her the ability to be a main DPS. Consuming one stack of Icy Quill gives her a stack of Skyfrost Mantra, and each mantra increases the damage of the next elemental skill by 5%, with a maximum of 50 stacks. But the problem is, you can only generate at most 7 stacks of Icy Quill when casting her elemental skill, unless you have her C6, where doing cryo attacks with normal or charge attack, it does not count towards the trigger quota. So her C4 basically only increases her elemental skill damage by 35% at most without her C6. This is really not worth it. Her C5 increases the elemental burst level, but the maximum cryo resistance that can be reduced is 15%, which is attainable when you level her elemental burst level to 10. Increasing the level further only adds more physical shred and the skill's damage by a tiny bit. Also, because any resistance shred below 0% is health, debuffing normal enemies that barely have any physical resistance with a physical shred only counts health, from a 60% shred to only 30% shred. This is why her C5 is also not worth it. The best place to stop when you're pulling for her Constellation is C3. If you want to go further, then go for C6 instead, because her C4 and C5 are just a waste of money. The best way to utilize all her potential is by giving Shenhe as much attack as you can to maximize the Icy Quill damage bonus that she gives. So using 2-piece Gladiator and 2-piece Shimenawa is the best option for Shenhe, since those two alone already gives 36% attack bonus to Shenhe. But if you want to build her as a sub DPS, giving her 2-piece Blizzard Trayer and 2-piece Gladiator is also a good option, since 2-piece Blizzard Trayer gives you a cryo damage bonus. Or if you plan on playing her by making her stay on the field and doing some normal attacks, giving her 2-piece Pale Flame and 2-piece Bloodstain is also doable. For the subset of the artifacts, the optimal and no-brainer way is by giving her attack percent Sands, attack percent Goblet, and attack percent Circlet. You wanted to make sure that she gets the highest attack percent stats from her artifacts to maximize her Icy Quill damage. And for the Flower and Feather, you might want to look for the one with the highest attack percent subset rolls in them. To be honest, she doesn't even need any other subset in her artifacts except for the energy recharge, since the other doesn't really matter on the Icy Quill damage output. But for sub DPS Shenhe, you can use the typical attack percent Sands, cryo damage or physical damage bonus, crit rate or crit damage circlet depending on your rolls to maximize her damage output. And the substats that you might want to look for are the typical DPS build, which is crit rate, crit damage, attack percent, and energy recharge. Since Shenhe's Icy Quill scales off her attack, you might want to look for any weapon that gives you the highest attack percent. Her best installed weapon, the Calamity Queller, without question is the best weapon for her right now, since it gives 741 attack and 16.5% attack bonus on the second stat. And the passive is also insane, since it gives 3.2% attack every second for the next 6 seconds after using her elemental skill, totaling to 19.2% attack bonus, and the effect is doubled if the character is off the field, totaling to 38.4% attack bonus. Not to mention the 12% elemental damage bonus that it passively gives. Adding it all, this weapon gives 741 attack and 54.9% attack bonus at max stacks, and 12% elemental damage bonus, which is really insane. Other good 5-star weapon that is good for her is Staff of Homa, since it gives attack bonus based on the character's HP, Primordial Jade Wing Spear that gives bonus attack on hit, or Engulfing Lightning that gives attack bonus based on energy recharge. Any other 5-star weapons are also good for her, since 5-star weapons tend to have a higher base attack than the 4-star ones. But there's a 4-star weapon that people are forgetting that's really good on Shenhe, and that is the Lithic Spear. But there's a caveat to this, and that is you need to have another Liyue character in the party to get the attack bonus and crit rate bonus with a maximum of 4 stacks. Shenhe herself gives a permanent 1 stack since she hails from Liyue, giving her an additional 7% attack bonus to the 27.6% attack bonus from the second stat. For the other 4-star options, Royal Spear or Wavebreaker's Fin is also a good option, since its second stat also gives attack bonus. Now we'll talk about her team comps. Since we can see from the explanation earlier that the Icy Quill are where Shenhe potential shines the best, and it can only be triggered when you are dealing cryo damage, so it makes sense to put her in a team that mainly deals cryo damage. Using Shenhe alongside Ganyu or Ayaka without a doubt is the best option, because not only can they trigger the Icy Cold, but they can also make use of the cryo resistance shred that Shenhe gives to deal an even higher damage. But there's a character that most people forget, and that is Chongyun. Yes, her nephew. This nephew-on combo is so ridiculous that you cannot ignore it. Chongyun's elemental skill casts an icy ring that infuses all characters' normal attack that stands on it with cryo damage, making Shenhe to be capable of being paired with any normal attack damage dealers that didn't do cryo damage before. Chongyun's Constellation 2 also gives a 15% cooldown reduction on elemental skill and elemental burst on any character that stands on his elemental skill ring. Thus, casting Chongyun's elemental skill first before casting Shenhe's elemental skill and elemental burst gives her a cooldown reduction, and this is great because it means that you can generate icy cools faster. You can pair Chongyun with Sacrificial Greatsword because of his Ascension 4. After his elemental skill disappears, he will summon a blade that decreases the cryo resistance of enemies hit by this blade by 10% for 8 seconds. To trigger this faster, recasting his elemental skill when the AoE field is still up will destroy the previous one and recreate the new AoE field, while also triggering his Ascension 4 passive. Also, if you're using Lithic Spear on Shenhe, pairing her with Chongyun also gives her another 7% attack and 3% crit rate to Shenhe, making her even stronger. Besides Shenhe and Chongyun, you can also use attack buffers such as Bennett or Sarah, or even the new 4-star Yunjin. Yunjin's elemental burst gives a flat attack bonus that scales off her defense to all party members, and her Ascension 4 buffs the flat damage bonus even higher. Also, because Yunjin is from Liyue, using Lithic Spear on Shenhe buffs her again with another stack, resulting in 3 stacks of Lithic Axiom. Last is the DPS position. The best DPS for this team is the one that can deal cryo damage, such as Ganyu, Ayaka, or Eula. But since we know that Chongyun can infuse a character that stands on his elemental skill with cryo, using any DPS that utilizes normal attack is also viable. The worst will be using DPS that can infuse their own attack with their respective elements, such as Hu Tao or Yoimiya. The last possible team comp for Shenhe will be the physical team, such as Eula's team that consists of Eula, Raiden, Shenhe, and the last spot being any utility units or healer or Zhongli. Shenhe buffs Eula's physical damage output using her elemental burst, and also provides elemental burst damage bonus to Eula. Shenhe is a godly cryo support that can buff your damage output by a crazy amount, and it's really easy to build her since all you need to focus on is to find artifacts that provide as much attack percent as you can. Finding artifact sets for her is also easy since the Gladiator set is always available since the beginning, and Shimenawa also has been around for a while. She is also very flexible with her weapon options and doesn't require any constellation for her to be good. If you have a main DPS such as Ganyu or Ayaka, Shenhe is such a great addition to your team because of how powerful her buff she brings to the table. But if you mainly play with other DPS that infuses their own tech with other elements besides cryo, Shenhe might not be the best choice for your team. That's it for today's video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and you can also leave a comment if there is anything else you wanted to know, and I'll try my best to answer them. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time.